everybody, Ninjo X the Enlightened Gamer here. Welcome to a brand new episode of
Mind of Ninjo!
And also a new episode of
Back again and about time too.
I have decided, in case you missed my last vlog, the announcement update and also Confederate flag topic, I have decided to permanently expand Mind of Ninjo, this show. It will now be an every other week show alternating with enlightened vlogs. Why am I doing that? Partly so that I can actually finish this particular game so we can move on to the next game, and also partly because it's been a fairly successful show here on this channel. At least comparing to some of my other shows that I've done so far. Whew, excuse me if I keep on wiping myself, it's like 1,000,000 degrees in here. But anyways, on to the first segment of the new expanded Mind of Ninjo. In the research and theories segment, I will build a basis for my argument and for my design process. You've already seen this in many other episodes, but this is the first time it will be expanded in this way. Let's start out with a look back to Project Dream. That's right, I'm opening that can of worms again. Help me! I'm just kidding, I can completely handle this. I am up to the challenge of deciphering the dream. It's well known, at least within Banjo-Kazooie fan community, that Grant Kirkhope recently released a lot of the tracks for Dream, many of which were either reconfigured or completely repasted into future entries in the series. One in particular caught my interest, and it has to do with the level, the new iteration of the level that we're exploring in today's episode. This is where things start to get interesting. Listen to how the music fades from an obvious lesser iteration of Mayhem Temple into that at one point Mayhem Temple and Angry Aztec may have been one in the same. The transition is too smooth for anything less than an area transition in a Rareware title. Much in the same way that the Gruntilda Lair medley in Banjo-Kazooie fades when you enter a new world entrance. Another theme as well. Listen to this. That's right. In addition to Angry Aztec and Mayhem Temple at one time possibly being the same level, it's likely that the area that would connect the two was what eventually became DK Isles. Now, Project Dream was initially a pirate-based RPG that likely would have looked somewhat like the renowned Super Mario RPG, as Rareware was already adept at using the same silicon graphics as the Mario RPG crew, Square Enix. And there's a lot more to this, but here's the ultimate theory. This is Ninjo's Angry Aztec theory. We've only seen one brief clip of what we know as Giant's Lair, and we've always labeled it as Mount Fire Eyes, as we assume that it's the peak of the Giant's Lair, and it very may well be. But look at the design on the archways here, and now look at this design in Angry Aztec. Now let's talk about Angry Aztec for a second, because temple levels have been a staple in the DK series ever since the beginning. But you know what hasn't been? I'll give you a second. Desert worlds. Not only does the name Angry Aztec imply a jungle setting, something that isn't received and something that is in all of the other temple levels, but it also is something we've never seen before in the franchise. You know where we do see a couple desert levels? Or a little bit of desert quicksand and the same textures in Angry Aztec? Banjo-Kazooie. It is my theory that Mayhem Temple, Angry Aztec, and the DK Archipelago were once the Great Sea and Giant's Lair. This would explain why all of these themes were in Dream's soundtrack, but none of them were announced levels for Dream. You thought I was going to give it a rest, didn't you? You do not know the depth of my insanity. And speaking of, that connects to another theory. This is Ninjo's Giants theory. This is a theory that I've never heard anybody else come up with. Never heard anybody else formulate or think of or come up with. I already said that. We've established that it's likely that the Fungi Forest Arena, where Dogadon is rematched, was to be the final arena inside Mount Fire Eyes, where the giant would be battled. It's very possible, even if it is largely speculation that'll probably never be proven or disproven. Please don't disprove me. Actually, no. I take that back. I take back what I just said. If you can, without a shadow of a doubt, disprove me, I would welcome the enlightenment. I would welcome the chance to learn that lesson myself. But let's go back to Banjo-Kazooie for just a half a second. Every single Rareware game that I can think of, and every single one that I own, besides one, has at least one repeating boss battle. In Donkey Kong 64, there's the already mentioned Dogadon battle and Dogadon rematch. There's also the Armadillo battle and the Armadillo rematch. In the original Donkey Kong Country, there's the Naughty and Very Naughty battles, as well as Master Neki and Master Neki Sr. In Banjo-Tooie, there are 3 Klungo battles. 3. In Donkey Kong Country 2, you must fight Creepy Crow and then Creepy Crow's Spectre. Another rematch. In Donkey Kong Country 3, You have to battle Chaos a second time before you get a crack at K. Rool. In Jet Force Gemini, you have to battle Mizar twice. I don't know about GoldenEye because, quite frankly, old style FPSs are a little bit rough on me. I'm not so good at them. Even as late as Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, they are still running strong with this trend. What it originally started as was most likely a way to save room on the incredibly small Super Nintendo cartridge, especially with the Silicon Graphics and FX chips already expanding the cartridges. By simply reskinning and giving slightly different movement patterns to pre-existing enemies. Pre-existing code. It's a lot easier to tweak something within the code than it is to completely add a new code. And you can hear evidence of it in a lot of games. It's not laziness, it's necessity. But Rareware made it a tradition. In almost every game. There is an exception. One that's very well known, that most people probably don't think of. Banjo-Kazooie. The original. The remnants of Dream. In fact, Banjo-Kazooie is the most asymmetrical of all Rareware's titles. Which is one of the reasons I love it so much, is because it makes no sense with as symmetrical a company as Rare is. So the question is, why? And I think the answer is very simple. There was a repeating boss battle in the beta of Banjo-Kazooie. One that took place multiple times, enough times, that we actually see in the very limited beta footage Banjo and Kazooie going into the first Giants Arena. By combining my theory, my fungi forest theory, with my angry Aztec theory, I will say that originally the giant was battled twice. The first time in what would eventually become Angry Aztec in the first Dogadon Arena. The second time, not in Fungi Forest, but in Mount Fire Eyes, which would later become Hailfire Peaks. It's likely that Mount Fire Eyes was another Rare tradition, a bonus level. Something that could only be unlocked by finishing the entire game. It certainly would have been a more fulfilling bonus level than Cauldron Keep, which is literally a collection of boost your health, fill your eggs, fill your feathers, fight the witch. Little more than an arena to fight the final boss. Which, while that would be sufficient for most game companies, I don't think it's sufficient for Rareware. But that's just me. Last little bit of research and theories. In discovering that the DK Archipelago may at one time have been Black Eyes Sea, an outer world to the overworld for Dream, Grant Kirkhope himself said that part of the goal for Dream was working on what they called stretched polygons, which would essentially allow them to make Dream, once it was moved from the Super Nintendo to the N64, into the very first open world game. I theorized that the song we hear for DK Isles is actually the theme for essentially what would eventually become Spiral Mountain, which was originally a vast sea with a few small villages, similar to what we see in the Wind Waker. But that is just the research. Let's move on to... Last time we left the Kongs, they were fresh out of Fallaway Factory. And by returning the gears to the Greenscale, the Reptile Refuge, I keep on wanting to call it the Greenscale Ghetto, probably wouldn't fly over so well with certain international audiences. With the Reptile Refuge, some of the smog was blown away from DK Isles yet again. This time, exposing what was once the Angry Aztec. A world that was lost in time, that did not belong with the others in DK64. Diddy is able to use his rocket barrel jetpack to get up to the Angry Aztec lobby without getting lost in the fog. And when he does, he finds something peculiar. The lobby's crumbling. Large segments of sandstone that once made the temple containing the arch have crumbled away. But it looks unnatural. The holes are too perfect, too circular, too square to have been incidental. Diddy enters the lobby to Angry Aztec and is meted with a mechanical droning sound instead of the familiar song of the lobby. By switching to Funky and activating the arch with Funky's plug, you can enter it, and in doing so reveals the third level of the game to be Gorilla Grease Gulf. Angry Aztec is for the most part unchanged, but many of the monuments have been torn down, and oil rigs dot the map, hauling crude to the surface, creating a veritable ocean of crude oil. Couple that with the return of a familiar foe from the Donkey Kong Country series, the Dum Drum, spitting out enemies, and this time a reference to the original DK arcade, fireballs, or as they became known in the Mario series, potaboos, into the area. The enemies that hit the tar eventually sink and disappear. But if a potaboo hits it, it catches on fire, and the Kongs have a limited amount of time to reach one of the many metal platforms scattered throughout the level, while the current layer of crude is burned off. Touching this wall of fire means instant death, meaning you can't afford to waste time. And what's worse is Diddy's rocket barrel jetpack can ignite the crude on its own. So using this move in this particular level is incredibly dangerous, and not coincidentally required to collect multiple of the cogs and to open up the door that once only an invincible Donkey Kong could travel through. At the back of the long hallway, if you have enough crystal coconuts, you'll see a cage. A cage protected by multiple dumb drums. Inside that cage is none other than Dixie Kong. These dumb drums are special from the others. They only spit out a potaboo after 100 enemies have been defeated. No, not 100. Let's scale that back to 25 enemies has been defeated coming out of one. These dumb drums will spit out anything from the classic Kremlings to Crushers. And you must defeat wave after wave of soldiers as Diddy or Funky if you somehow manage to get him in there, in order to ignite the crude with a wave of potaboos, free Dixie with a chimpy charge. At this time, to preserve the original canon, Dixie will explain to Diddy, who's the only one that can open the door, that she had been learning all of her cousin Tiny's original moves. That Dixie can use Teeny Tiny as well as many other moves, which will of course have to have a different name than Teeny Tiny, with Dixie using it not being tiny. Maybe Pixie Dixie, because that still rhymes. It's not alliterative, but it'll be close enough. Eventually, the Kongs can reach a boss door, and behind that boss door is another familiar foe. Without the Kremlings to guide him, Dumb Drum has become mad with power, and just plain mad. The Dumb Drum Arena is no joke. Many gamers are asking for harder enemies in games. And if that's what you're looking for, Dumb Drum will fit the bill. This may be the first large cog you have to skip. This iteration of Dumb Drum will start the battle on a field similar to the terrain you're used to dealing with small but oil-drenched dry land and quicksand filled with churning crude, as well as just 2 metal platforms to escape. Dumb Drum will launch a flurry of blows, smashing itself all over the ground. Then it will summon many smaller drums. The smaller drums will spit out one unique type of enemy, thus advancing a very unique type of boss from the original games. Once you defeat every single enemy from the first batch, the various drums will crack and sink into the ground, causing Dumb Drum to unleash a faster and more furious flurry of blows on Dixie Kong. Forgot to mention, she's going to be the one in there. Only Dixie will be able to maneuver over some of the large pools of quicksand using the ponytail twirl. Giving her a distinct edge over the boss the others would not have. This cycle will repeat itself until Dumb Drum is spitting out the most powerful enemies in the game. When you defeat these enemies, Dumb Drum will shake, attack the Kongs once more, and then spit out another wave of mini drums. This new wave of mini drums will, as you may have predicted, spit out Potaboos. The Potaboos will ignite the crude, and Dixie will have an incredibly short amount of time, based off of the sheer number of Potaboos, to retreat to one of the metal platforms. Doing so will save her from the flame. But when the fire and the smoke clears, there will be no Dumb Drum. Now that that's all out of the way, let's move on to the final segment of this particular video. This segment will add any information that I may have glossed over or forgotten in previous videos. In this case, my grievance with bonus barrels and the fall of Rare. Little to many people's understanding, the fall of Rare began here with Donkey Kong 64. This marked the beginning of the end. And I hope as much as anybody else, that Rare Bible can bring them back. Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3 started a tradition of adding bonus barrels. In Donkey Kong Country, it was simply bonus rooms, almost all of which served the purpose of either giving the player an animal token or an extra life upon success, but not requiring their success in order to mark the secret room as found. Beating the game was entirely up to the skill required to play the game. And even though there wasn't much of a reward, I appreciate that. I don't need a bunch of fancy bonuses and tricks and stunts and extras. I just want to be able to enjoy the game. It was also fairly easy to do because all that was required was a handful of repeating secret areas with slightly different textures drawn on the shapes of the rooms. There's only a handful of different bonus challenges in the original Donkey Kong Country because of this. And in Donkey Kong Country 2, though it's expanded considerably in the number of rooms, the spirit of the concept was not lost. All of the bonuses in Donkey Kong Countries 2 and 3 still rely on gameplay mechanics gained by playing the actual game. Particularly bash the baddies and collect the stars from those two games, which results in receiving Creme coins, or in the lost levels, DK tokens. Donkey Kong 64 was a huge game for a Nintendo 64 cartridge game. absolutely massive. People underestimate and underrate just how huge it actually was. The amount of files on that tiny 64-bit cartridge is absolutely astounding. But they wanted to keep the bonus barrel tradition alive. So they did it in the worst possible way. By adding a couple of tiny mini games, all of which have nothing to do with the skill required to play the game. Swimming coin collecting challenges marred by bad camera control. Shooting galleries that have nothing to do with the rest of the game. Slot machines that not only are out of place, but again have absolutely nothing to do with the game. And worst of all, some games that don't even seem to work. This started a tradition for Rare. A tradition of doing things because it was tradition, instead of trying to improve them. So what we get are a collection of mediocre at best minigames that some work and others don't, all of which have nothing to do with the game, because they were trying to save room on the 64 cartridge, which is understandable. What's not understandable is that the tradition continued. It continued into Star Fox Adventure. It continued into many other games. While it works in a game like Viva Pinata, if only just, it made people frustrated. All of a sudden, the skills that they gained playing the game didn't amount to anything. And it just became reflex-based junk. And it hurts me to say that. The bonus barrels in DK64 started a landslide. Started a tradition of half trying to inject random minigames, many of which make no sense, into Rareware titles. Accumulating in Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, which at its core, while it was far more true to the original minigame style that Donkey Kong Country created, instead of the one that DK64 injected, finally the fans had had enough. And when they did, Microsoft took the reins, and Rare was assimilated. Assimilated and converted into something they thought was more useful. Connect. Does it sound like I'm disgusted? Because it should sound like I'm disgusted. Because I'm disgusted. But to end things off with on a good note, let's open the next level. Let's take that big golden cog that we fought so hard to get from Dumb Drum, as well as the others that we gathered as Diddy, Funky, and now Dixie, back to the Reptile Refuge. Plugging them all in will cause the turbines on the back of the mechanic rock to whir and click once more, causing the entire croc to float back to the surface and unblocking the door to the level that was once Gloomy Galleon. That's all. But until next time, stay a brain, and as always, stay enlightened.